Well, you would not know this, but this is going to be the very first wedding at MEX. They're all like, yeah, you can have a wedding here. So if you want to be part of the first wedding at MEX, Gaza and Shazza, you got a new name apparently. Gary and Sharon are getting married on the 3rd, so come and celebrate with them. It's wonderful. And welcome everyone. What we're about to do now is we're usually in a church world, we would have a message and a sermon, right? And on our church family Sundays, we start to do that in a little bit different way. And so today you're going to be able to get some input through a short video, and then we're going to break up into some smaller groups, which we just love doing, sitting in some circles around the room, talking about what you've just seen, okay? So no, it's not a test. It is just going to be something that we feel like God's heart about relationships is He's drawing us into thinking about what's our relationship with Him, as Joe said, what's our relationship with each other, and what's our relationship with those in the world around us. And so today's theme is going to be a theme that I think all of you will be able to identify, which will be on the video as well. And so we come as a community open to the Lord, we come as a community open to each other, and a community also just open to the world around us. And that's what Church Family Sundays are doing, making space to say, how does that look for us to live that out? How does that look for you? What are you seeing in the world around you? What are you seeing God doing in your own world? So today, everyone can contribute. You're welcome. Whether you're here the first time or whether you've been here since we planted in 1996, you're all welcome to contribute. And you're also welcome to be supported if there's anything that comes up in your small groups. We are here to pray for you. We are here to support whatever you're seeing in your life that might need a bit more of God in it, okay? And so we welcome you to share it with us today. And so at the end of the small groups, so we have video, then we'll do our small groups, and we've got some tables at the back there for our small groups to help facilitate that, if you'd like to do that, leaders. And at the end of that, we have a feast and cuppa time, all right? And that's, I'm sure, what you're all hanging out for, right? Because the cooks in this church have, again, come with their creativity, and I'm just amazed to see all that's turned up on that table. So are you ready? Okay, so today's theme is going to be about a God who is all value about relationship, but a God also that invites us to be involved through partnership. And so we're looking at the theme of justice. We're looking at this biblical word that is also a word that's very relevant for our times right now. And the big story of God is that this need for justice comes to every human being. And you'll see on the video that it sets us apart from any other creature. We have a value and a need for justice. And for that reason, we also have some things that are unjust because people like power, right? And so when people, humans, grab power, often there's an imbalance, and that's where we need to see God's justice restored. So today the video is going to be focused around Micah. Micah talks about, he's a prophet in the Old Testament, and he said, God has told you humans, anyone humans in the room? Yes, so God has told you humans what is good, and what the Lord requires of you is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So that's what the theme is going to be today, that as we stand with this new status of being, like we've just walked through, receiving forgiveness and fully free because of the forgiveness of Christ, we have a new status, but we also have a power to change things that are unjust. Is it unjust? Unjust. What is it? Unjust, yeah. I just like the word justice, not injustice. It's not a word either. Last week I was saying, I'm just a clunky pastor that often gets words wrong, but I love the fact that you're all sitting here just kindly going, yeah, Di, it's not that word. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at what does it look like to love your neighbour as yourself, as we've been instructed through justice. So are you ready for the video? And at the end I'll come up and just help us move into groups, okay? All good? All good? Let's do that.
If you were a praying mantis, it would be socially acceptable to devour your mate.
And if you're a honey badger, you have no regard for other animals. You don't care.
If you're a panda with twins, it's normal to abandon one to take care of the other.
But if humans do any of these things, we would call it wrong, unfair, or unjust.
Yeah, why is that? Why do humans care so much about justice?
Well, the Bible has a fascinating response to that question. On page 1, humans are set apart from all other creatures as the image of God.
Yeah, God's representatives who rule the world by his definition of good and evil.
And this identity, it's the bedrock of the Bible's view of justice. All humans are equal before God and have the right to be treated with dignity and fairness no matter who you are.
And that would be nice if we all did that. But we know how the world really works.
And the Bible addresses that too. It shows how we are constantly redefining good and evil to our own advantage at the expense of others.
Yeah, self-preservation. And the weaker someone is, the easier it is to take advantage of them.
And so in the biblical story, we see this happening on a personal level, but also in families, and then in communities, and in whole civilizations that create injustice, especially towards the vulnerable. But the story doesn't end there. Out of this whole mess, God chose a man named Abraham to start a new kind of family. Specifically, Abraham was to teach his family to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice.
Yeah, doing righteousness, that's a Bible word I don't really use, but what comes to mind is being a good person.
But what does that even mean, being good? The biblical Hebrew word for righteousness is tzedakah, and it's more specific. It's an ethical standard that refers to right relationships between people. It's about treating others as the image of God,
With the God-given dignity they deserve.
And this word justice, it's the Hebrew word mishpat. It can refer to retributive justice.
Like if I steal something, I pay the consequences.
Exactly. Yet most often in the Bible, mishpat refers to restorative justice. It means going a step further, actually seeking out vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of and helping them.
Yeah, some people call this charity.
But mishpat involves way more. It means taking steps to advocate for the vulnerable and changing social structures to prevent injustice.
So justice and righteousness are about a radical, selfless way of life.
Yeah, and you find this idea all over the Bible. Like here, in the book of Proverbs, what does it mean to bring about just righteousness?
Open your mouth for those who can't speak for themselves.
And what do these words mean for the prophets, like Jeremiah?
Rescue the disadvantaged, and don't tolerate oppression or violence against the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow.
And like here, look in the book of Psalms.
The Lord God upholds justice for the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, and sets the prisoner free. But he thwarts the way of the wicked. Whoa, he thwarts the wicked?
Yeah, in Hebrew, the word wicked is rasha. It means guilty or in the wrong. It refers to someone who mistreats another human, ignoring their dignity as an image of God.
So justice and righteousness is a big deal to God.
Yes, it's what Abraham's family, the Israelites, were to be all about. They ended up as immigrant slaves being oppressed unjustly in Egypt. And so God confronted Egypt's evil, declaring them to be rasha, guilty of injustice. And so he rescued Israel. But the tragic irony of the Old Testament story is that these redeemed people went on to commit the same acts of injustice against the vulnerable. And so God sent prophets who declared Israel guilty.
But they weren't the only ones. There's injustice everywhere.
Yeah, some people actively perpetrate injustice. Others receive benefits or privileges from unjust social structures they take for granted. And sadly, history has shown that when the oppressed gain power, they often become oppressors themselves.
So we all participate in injustice, actively or passively, even unintentionally. We're all the guilty ones.
And so this is the surprising message of the biblical story. God's response to humanity's legacy of injustice is to give us a gift, the life of Jesus. He did righteousness and justice, and yet he died on behalf of the guilty. But then God declared Jesus to be the righteous one when he rose from the dead. And so now Jesus offers his life to the guilty so that they too can be declared righteous before God, not because of anything they've done, but because of what Jesus did for them.
The earliest followers of Jesus experienced this righteousness from God, not just as a new status, but as a power that changed their lives and compelled them to act in surprising new ways.
Yeah, if God declared someone righteous when they didn't deserve it, the only reasonable response is to go and seek righteousness and justice for others.
This is a radical way of life. And it's not always convenient or easy. It's courageously making other people's problems my problems.
This is what Jesus meant by loving your neighbor as yourself. It's about a lifetime commitment fueled by the words of the ancient prophet Micah. God has told you, humans, what is good, and what the Lord requires of you is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
So here's what we're going to do. For the next 15 minutes, we're just going to break up into some small groups, and I've got some people that are going to help us with that. So those that are helping me out with that, do you want to just stand up so we can see who we've got? These are the people that are going to help with conversation, and they're also brilliant people to help hear your story. So today, whether you're here for the first time or not, we just want to hear, what are you seeing about justice in your world? So at the moment, you guys that are standing, there's a few options at the back. If some of you want to grab a table, just if you want to walk up the back and grab a table, if you need to take your chair with you. And if you don't want to grab a table, leaders, if you want to just form a spot so that it keeps standing so people can see you're a group. So let's do that now. They're just going to head over and you all get to check them out and go, I wonder where I would like to go today. Some of these people are life group leaders. If you're visiting for the first time here, Rob Carter at the back here is going to take the first table closest to him. So Rob, just wave. Oh, you can't wave, you've got a chair. So if you're visiting and this is your first time, come and sit with Rob and he'll just help us to get to know you, and I'll want to pop in on that table too and say hi, because we'd love to know who you are and welcome. So if you're visiting and you would like to not be amongst the visitors and want to actually get to know some of our church, you are welcome to join any of these groups, okay? So the next 15 minutes, over to you. The questions will be also on the screen. Joe, is that going to be too hard to flip them back up there? Thank you. And let's all stand, grab your chair. If you need help to carry your chair to a group, just tap someone on the shoulder and they will help you carry your chair. 15 minutes in your groups talking about justice. Thank you.